All right, we're going to talk about angle of elevation and depression. And we're going to solve these using trigonometry. Now, I'm using this calculator here for my notes, but if you don't have a calculator, you can go to desmos.com/scientific, and it will get you a calculator that will work as well. So we're going to use trigonometry to solve some word problems. So here's one here. You stand 8 feet from a tree, and you measure the angle of elevation as 50 degrees. How tall is the tree? So angle of elevation is just like elevation means how tall. So we're trying to figure out how tall this tree is. And this angle of elevation, so here you are, and this angle of elevation is 50 degrees. So we've got this angle. We want to figure out how tall it is, and you're 8 feet from the tree. So I'm going to mark this here as 8 feet. So looking at this information that we've got, I can use SOHCAHTOA to figure out which trig function are we going to use. Now from this angle, x over here is opposite, and this side here is touching it, so it's adjacent. Remember, hypotenuse is always across from the 90-degree angle, so we don't need the hypotenuse. So we're going to be using tangent because it has opposite over adjacent. We don't know the hypotenuse. We're not trying to look for the hypotenuse. Okay, so now I get to write this to set it up. So tangent 50 equals opposite over adjacent, so x over 8, and now I'm going to, I can put this over 1, and I can cross multiply, and then I can say, okay, 1 times x is equal to tangent 50 times 8. And now we can solve for x. So I'm going to use my calculator, and I can find tangent 50, tangent 50, and then I hit enter, and I get 1.19, and I multiply that times 8, and I get that to be equal to, so it's 8 times 1.1917, and then times 8, I got 9.53, and this is feet tall. Now, when you're doing math space, be careful when they ask for lengths of things. If they say nearest degree, they might say nearest degree or integer. They might say 2 decimal places. Okay, so be careful what they're asking for. And you might have to write x equals and then the answer. Okay, so be careful, and be careful with rounding. Okay, all right, let's do another problem. Okay, so you're standing on the edge of a ridge and you want to know how far it is to the other side. Okay, so from your eye, the angle of elevation of depression is 23 degrees to the other edge of the ridge. You are 1.4 meters tall. How far is the ridge? So what the information they've just told you is that you're 1.4 meters tall. So that's the length from here to here is 1.4. Okay, and they've said the angle of depression, this angle right here, is 23 degrees. Okay, So if from here to here is 1.4, if I drew an imaginary um, uh, line here, then this line that I'm drawing here in blue should be the same height as your height, and you know that this angle of depression, they've told you you've measured it to be 23 degrees. So given this information, I can draw this triangle here. We know that this measurement here is 1.4 meters tall. We know this angle here is 23 degrees, and we're trying to find this one here. Now, in our previous triangle, we knew that this was the hypotenuse, and here we've got our 90-degree angle, so we don't need the hypotenuse. So I write down that acronym, so TOA. I don't need the hypotenuse, so I'm not going to use sine or cosine. Once again, we're left with tangent. So I'm going to say tangent 23 degrees equals opposite over adjacent, so 1.4 divided by the adjacent, which is x. And so if I put this over 1 and I cross multiply, I end up with x times tangent 23 equals 1 times 1.4. Okay, so I'm going to do tangent 23 on my calculator, tangent 23, and I get 0.4245. So I have x times 0.4245 equals 1.4. Okay, so I substituted tangent 23 with this decimal. Now notice here I rounded up. If this number, the 7, it's higher than 5, then you round up. Okay, so now to solve for x, I need to divide both sides by that decimal. X is equal to 1.4 divided by 0.4245. So I'm going to type that into my calculator. So 1.4 divided by that, so that answer, and I hit enter, and I get 3.298. So 3.30 would be, if I wanted 2 decimal places, then this 9 would round up from the 8, and I would have 3.30 meters. And that would be the distance between the 2 cliffs. Let's do one more example. Okay. You lean a ladder that's 12 feet tall, or 12 feet long, and the angle of elevation is 25 degrees. How tall is the wall? Okay, so let's do this. We've got a ladder, and you know the length of the ladder because when you bought it at the store, it told you how long it was. Okay, so we know that this is 12 feet. And you want to know how tall the wall is. You don't know what it is. Okay, and the angle of elevation is 25 degrees. So from the ground to elevate, it's 25 degrees. So how tall is the wall? Now, given this triangle that I've got here, so here's my triangle, right? This over here is far away from the angle, so it's the opposite. And this, the wall is going straight up and down. This side here is the hypotenuse. So once again, so TOA, if I've got opposite and hypotenuse, I'm going to be using sine. We don't know the adjacent. We're not trying to find the adjacent. We're using opposite and hypotenuse, we're going to use sine. So now I'm going to say sine of 25 degrees equals opposite over hypotenuse, so x over 12. And now we can solve for this. I could put this over 1 and we can cross multiply, and I get x times 1, I'm just going to write x, equals 12 times sine of 25. So I'm going to take my calculator, sine of 25, I get this decimal, 0.4226, and I'm going to multiply that times 12, and then I get x equals 5.07 feet. Okay, there you go. And that's it for the notes. Copy this carefully. You may want to re-watch this to see if you need extra help.